Welcome to Deep Dish and Tell, one of my favorite pizza places in Chicago, Bar Cargo, Roman Pizza. I'm gonna get an opportunity to meet with my good friend Michael Kane and get the scoop, really hear about the details of his life and his practices. Awesome. Hey buddy, thanks for meeting me. I appreciate it.
Good to see you.
I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Me too.
Deep Dish and Tell. This is my concept where we're gonna sit down, we're gonna get into the details of stuff. And you know why I picked pizza?
Sounds good.
I love pizza.
I love pizza too.
Do you really?
It is my favorite dessert. When people say, what sort of dessert do you like? I don't like anything sweet. Pizza is my usual dessert in New York. I'll leave the restaurant, walk down the street, there's always a pizza place open, a slice for dessert.
How many nights a week will you eat pizza?
I eat pizza, every other night. No, every third night.
Every third night?
Every third night.
You know, I was just in Italy a couple months ago with Sabrina. I had pizza every single night.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a problem?
No, it's a good thing.
So I figured I would share this place with you because it's one of the best places in Chicago. Not as many people know about it as they should because they know all the famous deep dish ones. Yeah. This one's got Roman pizza, so we'll get to enjoy that.
Terrific.
Hi.
Some drinks.
Thank you.
There we go.
I was just getting thirsty.
Yeah, it's a little hot out.
Perfect.
Yes.
Cheers, man. Welcome to Chicago.
Thanks.
It's unusual to see you in a city that's not
yes, well,
got a foreign zip code.
Exactly. I don't see you in Chicago, and you rarely see me in New York.
I know, isn't that funny? It's like I see you everywhere in the world.
It's our lives.
If you want, after I made the pizza for you, and we try.
We'd love to try.
It's okay.
So what's your favorite pizza to make?
I made a lot of pizza, but my favorite is one pizza that I made in Italy with the salmon, strawberry, and burrata.
Salmon?
Salmon, strawberry, and burrata. So
salmon, strawberry, and burrata is something that I would never choose, but I would trust you because he seems like someone you could trust from his accents.
And it's not a slice you're going to get at the corner, right?
All right, I want to ask you a question about my travel because I'm so interested in this because we live this life similarly. Have you ever gone to an Asian city for one day?
Oh yes, many times. I was in Singapore this year for less than 20 hours.
So you New York to Singapore for less than 24 hours?
Yeah.
And when you tell that to people, what do they think?
Oh, a lot of people think I'm a little off anyway. But yeah, that seems like not so bad to me. It started, my first weird one was about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I went to Australia for 30 hours.
Right.
And it was over Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
They did it there, and I thought that seemed fine. Now, this is going to sound strange. One of the most relaxing things I do is take a long plane ride.
I'm with you.
I love long haul flights.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, now, you can connect to Wi-Fi, but for most of my life, you could not. So it was sanctuary, I'm like Quasimodo, and everyone wants you all the time, and no email, no phone calls. I'm just laying in a little bed, watching movies, and people bringing me things to eat and drink whenever I want. That is my actual vacation, because, the people, when they hear where we go, they think, oh, that's great. Oh, did you have a great time? Well, I was in like a convention center ballroom with like the beige walls and the drapes because all these places look the same. It doesn't matter what city you're in. And you were in the airport and you ran into the hotel and you ran to the convention center or you ran to the ballroom or the meeting room. And then you're back in your hotel and then you're out.
I know. And sometimes you're eating dinner out of the mini bar because you're so busy, right?
Yes. And you don't know where there is to eat at midnight or 1 in the morning in Taipei or wherever you are.
But let me ask you a question. Is that more relaxing to you than like a day in the office?
A day in the office I like, but it's weird. I have a different mindset when I'm in New York. Because I'm on the road so much, when I'm in New York, I work hard.
Right.
I'm getting up early, I'm going in the office, I'm operating, I'm getting home late. Even when the patients push me late, then you're sitting there answering emails about abstracts or papers, and reviewing articles for journals, and I'm in the office till 10, 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. I get home, I go to sleep. If I'm lucky, I get to go to the gym, and then you're up again. People ask me my favorite restaurants or bars, places to go in New York. I have no idea.
Agree.
I can tell you 5 places to go in Hong Kong.
Right.
But I don't know where to go in New York City.
But there's a sense of, tell me if you think the same, but there's a sense of relaxation. Like you get on that plane, you're relaxed, and even though you may be in a different time period when you get up, you're energized.
Yes.
And then you work and then come back, I'm more relaxed there than I am working these 14, 16-hour days in the office, operating all day long, seeing patients. That to me is more stressful, more cortisol than actually the traveling. Do you find the same?
When I'm working in New York, those days are hard.
Right.
And then you get home and it's almost this race to go to sleep because I need sleep, and you can't just lay there because you've got another hard day, because it's just the way it works. If you want to spend, a third or half your time on the road, people say, well, how can you do that? How can you ever, don't you like operating? I love operating.
Right.
Oh, don't you like seeing patients? I love seeing patients.
Right.
Well, then how do you do that? Well, you just work every day.
Right.
That's the only way it works. And I have certain weird rules for myself. Like, I will never work on the plane unless absolutely necessary, which is rare. So if I'm going to a meeting and I have 6 presentations, I will stay up all night long. I will stay up till 5 a.m., take a nap to pretend that I've gotten some sleep for my brain, and then go to the office. And I often just go straight from the office to the airport because I don't want to work on the plane. So I feel relaxed when I get there. I don't have anything.
What do you do on the plane? Movies?
On the plane, I watch movies. Sometimes I'll read a little bit, but mostly I watch movies, listen to music. It's weird. I love movies. And I typically will not watch a movie I want to see that I haven't seen yet. I don't like it on that tiny screen.
Yeah.
Even say Oppenheimer was out. Yeah. I waited and went to the IMAX theater to see it. I love big screens. Yeah,
I'm with you.
And so a movie I really want to see, I don't want to watch on that, jet screen for the first time. There are plenty of movies I like and will watch over and over.
What's your trick for jet lag? How do you avoid jet lag? A seasoned traveler, I have my tricks. I'm sure you have yours too, because we deal with it all the time, how to avoid it. So how do you do it?
I think about the time zone where I'm going, starting about 2 days before I go there, and I start getting ready for it. I think about it, and I think about what it's going to be, and I get it in my head. For instance, when we go to Europe, and I'm in New York, you're in Chicago, that's a short flight.
Nothing.
And from New York, it's even shorter, so there again is that race to go to sleep. Whenever you check in, you want to go to sleep as quickly as you can. So the days before, I will start getting up early, and I will sleep deprive myself a little bit. The day that I'm leaving, I will force myself to get up at 5 a.m., like an hour earlier, an hour and a half earlier, go to the office, then I get to the airport, and by the time we take off, I always eat before getting on the plane, and so I don't wait for the meal service. I typically sit there, watch like one movie that I've seen 20 times, so that I don't care about the ending, so that I'm not that engaged in it, and I can drift off to sleep. And that's my thing for Europe. For Asia, it's a lot easier because the flights are so long.
Awesome. So this is burrata?
Yeah, so I brought you guys a couple of things.
Thank you.
I brought you burrata, so we have a little bit of Rome over here. Then I brought you the cheese curds, which are specific for Chicago.
Awesome.
So a couple.
So I have an issue that I'm a little bit of a saltaholic.
Okay.
And if you could bring some salt too, that'd be great. Yeah. So when you first started traveling, I mean, you're a little bit before me on this. That was really unusual. It was a different time period. And what did your colleagues say and other people? It's like, where's he going this time? And why is he going? Like your friends who think, who know you as a plastic surgeon. Right. And you're traveling to Hong Kong? You're traveling to Taiwan? What do you do? Like, they think you're a spy?
Strange. Yeah. It was very odd. Well, they may not think I was a spy, but people in the airport often will think that I'm an air marshal. Because I'm global services, most of the United people recognize me. Many flights I'm the only one, or there will be 2 of us. And so They just sit there and they don't even call. They just look at me and wave me in. And I just walk in and get on the jet. And that's how it goes. And then everyone stares at you like, why is this happening? You know, what's going on?
Yeah. But tell me about your colleagues, your professional colleagues. So you're going, you're traveling, yeah.
Yeah, people didn't really get it. And it seemed a little strange. Well, first of all, just injecting, doing a lot of injecting 30 years ago in plastic surgery was like considered nuts.
So you're saying injecting, you're saying Botox,
right?
Or
botulinum.
Because at that time it was only Botox,
right? Right. Well, I was injecting before it was actually Botox. It was still oculinum,
right?
When I started squirting it, and people thought that that was nonsense. Well-known, powerful people in organized plastic surgery thought it was a joke and couldn't wait to tell me about it. They'd say, oh, you know, we're going to publish this article, but, you know, it's still not really surgery. No one really cares about this. Really? Yeah, nobody really cares about it. You know, from the first handful of patients, I knew that it was going to be something that would change everything. Change society.
So how did you know that? What made you figure that this new curious drug, and you're a surgeon, and no surgeons are doing this, and it's
right.
Botox.
Right.
This has got to be like early 2000s, late 90s.
1991.
1991, early 90s.
Right.
So I mean, that's so contrarian to what every plastic surgeon is doing at the time. What made you realize that this was the thing to do?
It was, you know, a decent idea surrounded by good fortune. I'm hanging out with Richard Lissman, who's the king of oculoplastic surgery in New York. We were talking.
Wow, you are good. Another reason to come back here for more.
Yep. I had
You're
done
behind me. That rarely happens.
Talking. And I'd done a case and I asked Richard for a little help. And so he helped me out, and we're sitting around talking in the residence lounge. And we're saying, what's new in each other's specialty? And he says, well, have you heard of this botulism stuff? And I said, no. And he says,
who's Richard?
Richard Lissman is like the king of oculoplastic surgery in New York City.
Okay.
He's, and in that world, he is the...
Early 90s.
Early 90s.
Okay.
This is summer of 91.
Okay.
And I said, so it relaxes muscle, paralyzes muscle? Yeah, paralyzes muscle. And then I say, well, how long does it last? And I think he's going to say 36 hours. I'm thinking more like Marcaine Plus or something. I think it's going to be a day or two. And he says, oh, a couple months, 3 months. Next words out of my mouth are, well, what about the corrugators or the frontalis or even for the crows? And about 20 seconds later, I say, well, what about the platysma? I mean, we take out platysma when we're doing facelifts so they don't have a big band down the middle. We're surgically taking out parts of these muscles and throwing them away with this big operation. At that time in plastic surgery, almost everyone was getting a bicoronal brow lift. So when they're getting a facelift,
so they're
around the ears,
cutting across here and peeling the forehead down to get to the corrugators,
peeling
and then
everything
lifting it
down.
back up. Yeah.
Right. Now here's what's cool. My job was, when people frown, I would mark their frown lines. I'd mark their horizontal forehead lines. Right. I'd say raise your brows, and I'd draw on them. As soon as they went to sleep, my job as the fellow was to take methylene blue, which is a temporary tattoo, into those deep lines so we could know which parts of the muscle were stronger than the others. Then in the operating room, we're sitting there finding those muscles by the blue ink that I tattooed, and we're taking out bits of muscle, and I'm watching. Sometimes we take out a lot of muscle, sometimes we take out a little, sometimes we just checkerboard it with the bovie to weaken it. And this is all stuff that I'm doing every day. And I have this, you know, when someone mentions this botulism stuff to me. And so I think, wow, well, instead of this big incision and people being swollen and a little numb on the top of their head, which all those patients are, if I could do this with a tiny little needle, this is a big deal. And it's not just these muscles up here. Why on earth should we let, like, the DAOs...
Depressor angularis that pulls the corner of the mouth down, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, all the DAO does is help gravity pull your lower face down to the floor. Why wouldn't you want to relax that muscle? Why would you want to let it keep working?
So who else is thinking this? This is early 90s. I mean, no one's thinking
Well,
this.
I'm in a bubble. No, there's nothing in print. So when the Botox rules came out, all these things you're not supposed to do, and I found out I was breaking all of them.
Yeah.
Well, it's because there were no rules when I started.
Rules?
No, I'd break them anyway.
Yeah.
But this way, it just started out. I was doing it before those rules existed. You know, I always, in plastic surgery, I don't like recipes.
Right.
I don't like, you know, A, B, C, D, E, do it this way. I don't like doing one operation and shoehorning people into that operation. I like doing all different operations.
I think that's one of the reasons why you've been so like successful and so many people follow you and your writings and your papers get cited all the time, is because you were doing things before anyone was doing it. And you're a plastic surgeon doing Botox at a time when surgeons, it was so beneath surgeons. It was beneath dermatologists, truthfully, in the late 90s or even late 90s. It was like, dermatologists weren't even doing it, and it was considered not to be economically beneficial because you had to open one vial and it cost $400 for a vial. So it was like, it was in no one's best interest to like really go down this route at that time. And you were doing it because you saw something greater. You saw a creative element to it, right?
I knew it would work. Well, just when you think about aging, besides helping the patient look better right away, which it would do, it's also going to slow their aging down, right? If you're not scrunching that skin thousands of times a day, even if you're moving it relatively normally, you're not really crunching it, you're not going to age as quickly. These lines aren't going to get in there. I did a lot of work with facial paralysis patients, Bell palsy patient, cross-face nerve graft, reinnervating things, you know, temporalis turn downs to reinnervate people with facial nerve injuries. And it's weird, when you look at them, obviously the side of the face that's paralyzed doesn't look normal and doesn't look good. And there are operations you can do to make it look better. But if you sort of do the reverse of what you should normally do and ignore the forest for the trees, even though that side of the face looked not good, if you looked at certain areas, they didn't have any crow's feet, no matter how old they were. They didn't have a nasolabial fold.
Right, when they were paralyzed.
When they're paralyzed. So the face as a whole looks bad. But so if you could micro, you know, really in a controlled way, weaken certain muscles in certain parts, leaving most of the muscle working full strength, that's got to work.
I love your philosophy, but I want to understand better is, how did you go about being so contrarian? Like, everyone wants to be accepted. You're a young plastic surgeon, and all of the people you look up to are like, Michael Kane, what are you doing? This is terrible. This is unorthodox. This is heretical.
Right.
And you're just like, I put my hair back, I'm in a ponytail, I don't give a fuck. I mean, what were you thinking?
That was, you know, I don't know if it's a defect or a plus, but that gene where people really care what everyone else thinks about them, I sort of don't have it.
So you were okay with that in the beginning?
Yes, completely. Absolutely. But I was fortunate. So I have this idea, comes to me, but I'm just a fellow. Even though I had independent operating privileges, I'm an employee of the hospital. So I go to my program director, Bill Nolan. I explain it to him over 20 minutes. He goes, botulism, you know, that scares people. Like, what's going to happen down the road? What's going to happen in 5 years? And he listens to me and says, all right, that sounds actually okay. Just make sure, read everything. And then last second he says, you know what? You should talk to the boss, who was Tom Reese.
Oh, wow.
The great Tom Reese.
He wrote textbooks, he was the guy.
He's the founder of the Aesthetic Society. Tom Reese and Tom Baker, the last of the gentlemen plastic surgeons, founded the Aesthetic Society. I was his last fellow. It was his last year. For like 2 decades afterwards, he would tell the same joke at cocktail parties that I drove him out of plastic surgery. I drove him crazy with all this nutty stuff I was doing. And so he got it instantly. Tom Reese, the oldest guy, the old guy, you know, in his last year, instantly said, I remember saying, Michael, I think this could be big. I said, no, it's going to be big.
So Reese thought that.
It's going to be big.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I'm in his office explaining it to him. And then he says, well, you know what? I'm going to retire. who knows if there are going to be lawsuits or problems or all this other stuff. I don't want to dump something on the next guy. He says, go talk to Sherelle. So I go talk to Sherelle, Sherelle Aston, who's going to take over next year. And I explain it to Sherelle, and he says, yeah. He says, no, that sounds good. He says, but I want you to do one thing first. He says, get every paper ever written on this stuff and read it first and make sure, because I don't want to clean up your mess or anything like that. So I say, okay. And there's no internet then.
Maybe a dozen papers at most.
Yeah, and they're all Alan Scott papers.
Right.
The great Alan
Scott, the guy who founded.
But he started injecting chimpanzees, and then he moved to people, and all for blepharospasm, which is a muscle spasm around the eye, and strabismus, And so I read all of Alan's papers, and I just sort of guessed at the doses, and here's another thing. There was a cute girl who worked in the ophthalmology department.
Oh no, it's always a girl, isn't it?
No, we're just friendly. I was talking to her. But the ophthalmology department had the stuff. It wasn't in the plastic surgery department. But when you're working for a hospital, you don't care. You just grab stuff from anywhere. So I'm grabbing the oculinum then, or Botox later, out of the refrigerator, and just using it. And then, because there was no internet when I started practice, I went to the hospital pharmacy to buy my vial of Botox when I'm in practice, when I finished in summer of '92. And it was over $300. I almost had a heart attack. I thought, I'm going to be arrested. Like I've stolen, not for me, and they were all clinic patients, and they're all done properly. But I had no idea that this stuff was $300. I thought it was like a vial of lidocaine or something. I panicked when that happened. I thought, I'm in serious trouble now. But no, so that's how I started it. All the guys said, okay. And I read every word Alan Scott wrote on it, and I started, and I remember my very first patient was someone who I had on the books for me to operate on to do one of those brow lifts, which was the standard thing at the time. And I said, well, let's see. And if anything, this will give you like a preview of what it'll look like. Well, of course, and this was something that plastic surgeons, talk about the mainstream plastic surgeons not getting it. When I would present this to them, they say, you know what? That's good as like a preview for the brow lift. Give people like a little window into it so they know what they're getting. And I said, yeah. And so did you think about doing a study like to see what the people think? And I said, well, I would, except nobody ever got the operation after I did it with the needle. Zero.
Because they were so happy with the outcomes.
It worked so well, and it worked so good with that tiny little needle. Yes. And with Botox,
less expensive and easier.
And you can imagine, people have difficult foreheads, right? And you're trying to figure out the dose. It's one of the early areas to do, but I think probably the hardest area on the face to do regularly. And so you're sitting there guessing how strong it is and looking at the level of their brows, and you're doing this computation in your head. Now just imagine if you were doing that same computation, but instead of Botox and things that you can titrate, you're just doing it surgically, and you have one shot at it, and it better be perfect, because you're not going to reoperate on them to weaken it, and you cannot reoperate on them to stick more muscle back in if you took too much out.
So this is kind of an easier outcome.
It's much easier.
Right, so you're getting big into Botox, but you did something that was unique also, and I remember this very well. You cross specialties, and you were able to work with dermatologists, facial plastics, at a time period when that wasn't common. Many doctors don't realize that there was a time period where the specialties were very siloed and wouldn't work or help each other.
Yes.
But yet you did. So tell me about that.
That happened because at ASAPS, the Aesthetic Society meeting that we have, the best attended part of that meeting through the mid to late 90s was the Botox session. It was right before the cocktail party. Maybe that was it, but I like to think people wanted to learn about the new thing. It was always me, and then someone else from surgery, often Steve Fagan, and always a dermatologist.
Right.
And like Arnie Klein or Fred Brandt were typically it.
So Arnie Klein and Fred Brandt were dermatologists who were big back in the day.
Right, and back then, maybe in the mid-90s, Arnie was the king.
Yeah.
He was the Hollywood guy.
And he was Michael Jackson's doctor.
Michael
and rumor
Jackson
has it
and
that he's the
Cher
father of Michael Jackson's kids.
Well, I saw that interview where Arnie was hinting at that. Yeah.
So he may be the father of Michael Jackson's kids.
And so
rumor only, though.
Arnie befriended me.
Yeah.
I was like the young punk, and Arnie, like the king of the derm world then, liked me and plucked me out and brought me to derm meetings. In fact, when
did you look different back then? Like did you have longer hair? Did you just...
my hair has always been sort of longish, or real short. It changes.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm sort of a long hair guy. You
stood out a little bit.
I stood out a little, yeah. And I got along with Arnie. In fact, when Arnie was offered, when the first HA filler came out in the States, Restylane, Arnie was going to do this giant world tour, or US tour all around. And it was going to be a 2-person thing, and he okayed that the second person would be me.
Wow.
Now, he's the king, I'm the young guy, but that was another thing that helped me. I've been fortunate. The people
so you
I've
were
met
friendly
were good
with
to me.
these folks?
Yes.
And your colleagues were okay with it?
No.
Oh.
So I write the Botox book.
Yes, I remember that.
And
you wrote the definitive book.
There's a chapter in there, who should do your Botox? And back then, there were 2 choices. It was plastic surgeons or dermatologists. And I wrote either one. And I wrote their biases and their strengths and weaknesses, either way you go. So the obvious weakness, say, for dermatologists are, well, they don't look at these muscles. We look at these muscles all the time. We see these muscles in our sleep, right? They never see them, so they don't know the anatomy as much. But this is sort of like the top of their pyramid. They put a great emphasis on doing this well. Right. Plastic surgeons, on the other hand, I've seen these muscles forever, but they're almost irritated with the fact that they have to do it. It's the lowest thing, and they just slam it in there. And so I said, so either way is fine. As you might imagine, organized plastic surgery did not like this.
Nope.
I was confronted at one of our meetings, and someone who has a lot of power in the plastic surgery world told me I was through. And they sort of blackballed me from the plastic surgery meetings.
or ASPS?
ASAPS, which is the organization that my mentor started.
Which is actually more progressive of an organization.
Yes, and so they were furious, and they cut me off. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was a little irritated at the beginning. What happened? I started doing the AAD and ASDS instead every year.
This is like Einstein when they couldn't get anywhere.
They kicked me out of there. Okay, I'm going to go over there where it's more fun. Yeah. And they like me.
And truthfully, the derm meetings are a lot more fun.
When I went to my first AAD meeting, it blew my mind. Plastic surgery meetings are so boring.
Max, what do Okay, great. What do we have?
I changed the name. This is an authentic Italian pizza, Roman pizza style, with the color of the Italian flag. So white, green, and red. The Italian flag. It's okay. With
the Italian flag. Okay, we got that.
Burrata cheese.
Yes.
And cherry tomatoes and arugula.
Arugula.
The very good taste.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Compliments.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Max.
So first of all, we got to try this pizza.
So a couple of the old guard in plastic surgery thought that they were really hammering me.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be one of the absolute best things that ever happened to me.
Because the derm meetings were just so much fun.
They're so much more fun. And, you know, I'm a single guy. And plastic surgery, certainly at the time, it's like 95% dudes, right? And dermatology is majority women. Okay. And there's something about dermatologists, as
I know.
Wait. It's almost like they hold, all right, this sounds a little strange. It's almost like they hold a beauty contest when you graduate medical school and they go into dermatology.
There's no doubt there's a lot of very attractive people in dermatology. But this is one
you
story.
said that much better than I did.
Yeah, of course. There's one thing I've talked about is this AES meeting. This is AES. So this was the meeting that, and this is a terrible thing to say, or maybe it's a good thing, but I was single, you were single, and this is after I got divorced, and it was in Florida. And it was all PAs and extended providers who were getting into a sex. This is 10 years ago or more, you know?
Oh yeah.
And every year you and I would both go to that meeting. It'd be like, we were like the headliners at this meeting. And why? Well, we were both single guys. And it was fun.
Yes, yes.
Remember? It was
wasn't
99,
so bad.
it was all women in the audience.
It was different.
Why is Dayan and Kane doing that meeting? It's great with Goldberg's whole thing, and it's a great meeting.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we had a little bit of ulterior motives.
Yep.
Wow. Great. I want to get back to a question. Like when I first started speaking, and someone said to me, "We're going to fly you to California to give a lecture." And I'm like, "Oh God, I don't know if I can afford it." Like, "No, we're going to pay for your air flight." I'm like, "You're going to pay for my air flight?" "Oh yeah, we're going to get your hotel." I'm like, "And a hotel?" "Oh yeah, we're going to pay you to also like give a speech." I'm like, "Really?" Like, I couldn't believe that I was getting that because it was like blew my mind. So you and I grew up in this period of time where doctors were almost like celebrities, not to that level with outside, but what I mean by that, it was the KOL, key opinion leaders they called it, and these doctors would come in and they would speak mostly about their research, and these were doctors who were passionate about what they did, overly curious, and they weren't doing it just to be KOLs. They were doing it truly because they wanted to teach, in my opinion.
Yes. That's changed, unfortunately.
Is that era, that's what I'm going to ask you, is that era over? Like, are we the golden era? Like, I look back at Hollywood, I look at like Clark Gable, and I look at like Anne Hepburn, and all these people who were famous back in the day, Spencer Tracy. Was that us? Like, were we the golden era of aesthetics? Because it didn't exist when you started to what it is now.
Well, I mean, the whole thing didn't exist. Non-surgical rejuvenation by us. What was that?
Right.
It was different skin goop or something. That was it.
Right.
So that was a new thing that was started. And back then, you got to be a KOL. You were chosen to be a speaker because you were good at it and you had good ideas, and typically because you wrote a bunch of good papers. You were an academician at heart and you figured things out. That's not what makes someone a KOL today. And, today it's a little, unfortunately, I wouldn't say not as strict. The criteria are different. The biggest one lately is now people get invited to speak. It's sort of the famous for being famous thing. Because they have a lot of social media followers, people want to be successful. They want eyeballs, and so they get invited to speak. And then they have 15 minutes to speak. I'll remember the first time I saw a social media star at my favorite meeting, the giant meeting in Monte Carlo. She had 15 minutes. And so, all right, I'm curious what she's got to say. The first 5 minutes were pictures of her with semi-celebrities. Then there was a minute of one of the worst injections I've ever seen, and then a single before and after. Oh, by the way, she had one company in her conflicts of interest, and she announced to the crowd that you had to use this product or you were doing the wrong things for your patients. Completely bought and paid for. And then the last 5 minutes were pictures of her swimming pool, exotic cars, and cute little outfits. And I was like, wow. Now, that was just one person in a giant meeting. I still think it's the best meeting.
I think I know who you're talking about.
But, yeah. And this is what's happening to our thing. And you just said that great thing. And I remember the first time I was paid to go to Tokyo.
Right.
So I'm getting paid a decent amount of money to go to Tokyo to give the Japanese investigators their first Botox lesson. They were going to do their FDA clinical trials on Botox. So the company sending me over there. And it was the first time on my own I was in a business class seat on a jet.
Right.
And I'm getting paid. And they're putting me up in the Okra Hotel, which is one of my all-time favorite hotels ever. It's gone now. And I thought that was just so unbelievably crazy and great, and I loved it. But it was because I knew what I was talking about. And you wonder if now that person would be someone with 1 million followers just to have that name there. The other thing is, you and I, we used to get paid because, and it's interesting, people go, oh, so a company paid you? Oh, that's bad. And you must be like making a fortune. No, we lose money. Right? We lose,
so much.
Get paid. And basically to me, getting paid is just so I don't feel like too much of an idiot for accepting.
Right.
Because if we just stayed home and worked, we would make
a lot more, 5, 10 times more.
Exactly. And so people see that and they think that's a little weird. No, it's the other way around. But now there are people who would love to do that for nothing. In fact, they
just
would
to be
pay.
Famous.
They would pay just so they can put it on all their
social media
and say, oh, I taught all these people. I've been at a meeting where someone was selected or someone like this, and they went through the meeting names and they named me as someone they taught how to do Botox. You taught me how to do Botox, what, like 6 years ago?
Right. So what's your thoughts on social media's influence and impact on cosmetic medicine, where it is today and where you see it going in the future?
Well, I have ideas, but it doesn't really matter, right? I sort of don't like it, but I understand why patients do like it, why they want to have some idea. Because one of the things they're doing when they go for, whether it's injections or plastic surgery is a big deal. They're making a big commitment. They're trusting you. And they're paying a decent amount of money for something they haven't seen, right? It's a future promise. So patients in that position want to see as many before and afters as they can. Now, there's a problem with that. In fact, you know Joan Crone, right?
Yes, of course. She intimidated the heck out of me the first time I met her.
Joan Crone is, like, I would say, the layperson expert on plastic surgery in the world, maybe, right?
She was the editor of Vogue, right?
She was at Beauty and Allure. Allure. 4 years. And so Joan, when I started out, I didn't like the whole photo thing because it wasn't right for patients. Let's think about it. You do 100 facelifts. You have 100 before and afters sitting on your desk. What is a surgeon going to show their patient? They're going to show them 1, 2, 3. They're not going to show them 49, 50, and 51, which would be the more honest thing to do, right? And so for that, I've always been anti-pictures, which has hurt me, I know, in the long run things, but I don't care. It was sort of the right thing. It
seems more authentic to you.
Yeah. I don't show pictures like as a first thing. If someone is interested, then they can see pictures.
Yeah.
But I'm a little old school.
Yeah.
Tom Reese's last fellow.
Yeah.
And now it's a different world, and doesn't matter if you like it or not. But I will tell you the other thing that I hear constantly. When you have someone in your office who's had some surgical misadventure or some misadventure with injectables, the most consistent thing that all of those patients say that are distraught, unhappy, they always say, but they had such great before and after photos.
Yeah. All right, so social media you see as this vehicle for giving before and after pictures that maybe not super authentic. And does it concern you that people who are on social media, who are the most popular people on social media, may not be giving the best service to the patients, or the best expertise, or best outcome?
Well, that's one of the weird things. and this is a question, I'm sure you get it too. You and I both talked about what we do, but also things about not what we do, sort of like higher level thinking and psychology and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, what we're basically doing is psychiatry with scalpels and needles, right? We're just trying to
plastic
make people
surgery,
happy.
psychiatry, and I agree with this. And to me, I want to emphasize this point because I think the successful plastic surgeon, or aesthetic physician for that matter, is the one that knows how to meet their patients' expectations by making them feel better about themselves.
Yes.
Not necessarily being beautiful, but feeling beautiful.
Right. Exactly so. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's why you know you don't come down, and patients often try to play the game. I'm not going to tell you what I don't like. You tell me what's wrong with me. Well, that's exactly the opposite
Right.
of what we're supposed to
Right,
do.
right.
We're not going to point out some
Right.
mole that they think is great.
Right.
They think it's their Cindy Crawford mole, right? And you say, no, that's,
Yeah.
you don't want to do that.
So
You
the
want
social
people
media
to be
stars,
happy.
do you think they're focusing too much on that, or maybe it just outgrows us? Maybe.
Sorry, I always go on tangents. I ran a little bit, and so sorry, what were social media?
Social media, like I want to get your take on, because you're someone, you were there when aesthetics really just started as a field. I'm talking about aesthetic, non-surgical, Botox and fillers and all those things. And you've seen this evolution, and social media has completely changed over the last 5 to 10 years. Is that good? Is it bad? Is it neither? And where's it taking us?
So one of the most common questions we get in these high-level things, well, if we're doing all these neat things and have all these new technologies, why does it seem to be that patients look worse? Right?
Yeah.
10 years ago, people didn't look this freaky and weird, and you see it all the time now. Sure, you see it in the celebrity supermarket checkout magazines, but you see it walking down the street. You see it out
all
at
the time.
dinner. You see it everywhere. And I believe the reason is that due to social media, which again, neither good nor bad, it's just something that's there, people have moved from better providers to providers that do silly dances and sing funny songs and show their swimming pools and photograph their food at a tasting, and you know, as opposed to being a good doctor and more importantly having a good eye. I think that we'd probably agree. You could teach a monkey to inject things. It's all just judgment, and that's something a lot of.
Can that be taught, or is that learned? Did you come into this knowing that from your background, the way you grew up, the way you were raised, or is it something that you can teach a resident fellow or something you can learn?
I think it's the hardest thing to teach a resident or fellow, and I think the companies and the societies think this too. When you get in these educational powwow things, the big problem is teaching people judgment, teaching people what to do. And everyone wants a recipe. You know, companies do different things. Some people push a recipe. Actually, now most companies push a recipe because it makes it seem easy. It's not good for patients, I think. Instead, they need someone with a good eye. Now, here's the problem, and I don't know what the solution to this is. People go into a plastic surgery residency. So they've gone to medical school, they do years of residency afterwards, plastic surgery or dermatology, they work really hard, they get out, and this is what they want to do. They have no aesthetic sense whatsoever. They cannot figure out what looks good or what looks bad. They don't know what helps someone look attractive to other people. They don't have a sense of that. They've already done all this training. Are they going to go do something else? No. What are they going to do? Well, they're not that good, so they don't get people coming back, and they don't have patients for 30 years, following them. So what do? They put all their energy into social media to draw people in, right? whether it's coupons or discounts or something, or the silly dances. I agree with you. They got to do it, you know. And the problem is, how do you teach someone that? And I don't know if you.
So the aesthetics or the judgment? You mentioned two things. Now they're two separate things completely.
Yes. One follows the other, so that you're thinking, you're looking at them, and you're figuring out what makes them attractive, and then what would be relatively easy to fix and what would be hard to fix. So a new patient, in my practice, they get the whole thing. They get the easy thing, the in-between thing, and if you want to look as good as you possibly can, the third thing, which usually involves surgery. Now, most people usually want to try non-surgery things first to see how that looks.
Right.
But if you've got one tool and you do that okay, you're going to try to do that to everybody, which is what happens.
Right.
And you see it in people, and it's not a good look.
So your background's art. You went to art school, and some people don't realize that. Do you need to be an artist to be a successful aesthetic provider?
I don't think so. I think it helps. I wouldn't say the word artist, but you need to have an eye and judgment and an appreciation for aesthetics. And some people just instantly have it. And in the world outside of medicine, that separates them. You know, why are some people sought after photographers or, you know, set decorators or any of these other things in the world of art? Because they're good at it, right? So that's the primary thing. That's how they get their jobs. But with medicine, you do all this training, so there's a disconnect between seeing things and having good judgment and what you've been trained to do, anatomy and physiology and all this other stuff, and you put all that work into it. And even if you don't have that eye, you're still going to do it. You've been working hard for 10 years on the back end. Whereas someone who's trying to break into something, you know, they try it for a while, they realize people aren't hiring them, they don't really see things the way other people do, even lighting guys. You know, there's an art to that.
Tell me about your art background. You went to art school. What did you do in art school?
I did a couple of different things. Because strange backstory. So first thing I went to film school.
Film school?
At night for 8 years. Yeah. And so I finished that, and it's awfully collaborative. And I didn't, you know, the amount of working directors in the world is incredibly small. That would be a very hard thing. And then I went to design school. I went to Parsons for like another 8 years at night. But some classes were
all
only
before
offered
medicine.
in the day. Oh, after.
Oh, after medicine.
Because I did something. When I was a kid, I got accepted into this 5-year combined program. So I did college and medical school in 5 years. So I was young. I also voluntarily...
So you were like Doogie Howser.
James Apesos, my boss in my plastic surgery residency, called me Doogie the entire time. It was
Doogie
Howser. The time of the show. And actually at the time, then he called up the office when I finished and I was board eligible. And I was then the youngest plastic surgeon.
So you're in plastic surgery, then you decided to go to art school and design school.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I felt in this weird program I did, I denied myself an education in stuff that I liked. And I just liked it. Now, going to film school after I'm a plastic surgeon, did I really think I'm going to be directing big movies? No, I'm a plastic surgeon. Didn't matter. I felt compelled to do it. I always wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So I did it. I couldn't do it before, I did it then.
Yeah. And
same thing with Parsons. I like that too.
So do you think, so you have an art background, judgment from plastic surgery. I went through an article on this. Do you think that there's a saturation point? Like, you know, like not everyone can be a NASA astronaut. Not everyone can be a professional baseball or football player. Do you think there's a limit to how many people can be great aesthetic providers.
Yes.
And you get to a certain point and then you start to hit a curve where you start to get poor outcomes.
Yes, I think that's exactly true. And if not for that disconnect, it's exactly what you see in the art world. Right? Think about it. Every year in America, I'm not sure what the number is today, but it was about 50,000 kids went to art school every year outside of college. Now, how many successful working artists are there? Like it's not 50,000 a year join that workforce, right? So you can go through art school, you can do this, but it's a very, very extraordinarily tough world once you get out to make a living being an artist. Right? And so that, you know, whether good or bad, that allows some artists to work and some artists don't work. But once you've done 4 years of medical school and 5 years of residency, it doesn't matter what anyone tells you, you're gonna do that. And that's the problem. Well, that's what I think is the problem.
And if you get too many providers out there who aren't qualified, do you think the average result is not as good, which brings down the whole mean of results and maybe brings these results you're talking about, which are less than ideal, less natural looking?
Well, if you think about the results over time, I think we hit a peak maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, and then it went a little down. Now it's going sharply down.
Results not being as good,
Yeah, and it's because even with what I said, that people go to medical school now, independent nurses, PAs, people like that, are basically setting up shop on their own. Now, I want to say they're all bad. There's always room
for the
really sharp individual, right? There's always someone like that. But is that how most are? No, like you see, if you just scroll around on Instagram, you will see feeds from people with huge amount of followers who are not MDs, not sure how they were trained or what, and the results to me look absolutely horrible, right? You see these giant lips that no one ever on the planet Earth was born. Those are not natural lips. Those lips are not found in nature. And you see these other very bizarre things with the cheeks and the crazy jawlines, and nobody looks like that.
So how does a young person get great training today?
That's hard, right? And if I were to give someone advice, I would tell them to go into plastic surgery or dermatology.
Do a fellowship.
Yes, absolutely. But that is not what people are doing, right? Let's face it. The reason, what has changed dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years are non-MDs who are supposed to be closely supervised, which I think in a closely supervised, structured environment, everything's fine because the doc's in charge. They know if the person has good judgment or not, and they see these people. But when they're not supervised, or for instance, there's a chain of nurse injector clinics in Florida. Their MD is a retired pathologist. So when he was not retired, he never saw live patients. And that's the person signing all the charts.
Wow.
That's the supervisor.
Yeah. All right, so I've been to over the years, you've built a big following in aesthetics. Most people know you in aesthetics. If someone doesn't, they've been living in a rock. What do you think your reputation is? Like, do people know you as a maverick, as a contrarian, as...
I would like to think that that's how they think of me. Patients will often tell me that they like the fact that I'm like the mad scientist guy.
Okay.
That will try to figure something out and not afraid to try something new. I'll say, you know what?
They trust you for that.
I haven't really done this, but I think this would work on you. And then, if you just walked in cold, you might run away, but patients who know you say, okay.
Is your reputation different with your patients versus your colleagues that you work with versus your friends and family?
It's interesting. Some of my patients know that I'm constantly getting on planes and running around and doing all this. Some have no idea. You know, it's just odd.
Right.
Oh, really? You went somewhere?
Yeah, I get that too.
And it's, yeah, that's sort of what I do. So are you just like lecturing or, well, some lecturing, some sort of think tanking or ad boarding and trying to figure out how to make things better. But when we're on the road, whether it's lecturing or in an ad board, for me and you, the bottom line is always trying to make patient outcomes better.
Yeah.
Right?
So patient outcomes better.
That. I wish you could. You can't say that about everybody.
Okay, I agree with you on that. But and when you speak, what's your goal? You get up on stage and you're going to give a talk to a room of 1,000 people. What's your goal?
I want them to understand. I want them to take something away. But I don't want them to take away a knee-jerk reaction. If A, then B. They have this, I'll do this. I want them to sort of see. I try to always, and I know you do this too, you draw them into your mind and get them to see how you see things so they can make decisions that are good. Because the problem is, most of the fannies in the seats in the auditoriums are watching that needle go in and out, which doesn't matter.
Right.
What matters is the judgment. What matters is before you start injecting a patient, looking at the face and you explain what you're going to do, and then they can watch you try to do it. That's what's important.
Yeah. Isn't it disappointing too? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like someone gets up on stage and they give a talk and it's like, I've seen you inject. It's the same thing. Like, tell me how you're thinking about this that's going to alter the way I'm going to think about it. And I'm going to be like, oh, wow, you know, that's really interesting. I didn't think about it like that. Or, you know what? I've been noticing this thing, something that's going to change the way I think. Like, that's what I want.
Yes.
And there's so few that do that. And when they do, you're like so thankful to hear that talk, but it's rare.
Yes. But that's what makes it, I mean, I think you'd agree with me. The things that make you feel good about being on the road, someone comes up to you and says, oh, like 15 years ago, you don't remember me? And I used to do it like in the teaching course, like put this many units there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this here. And then after your thing, I stopped and I started to try to think about this. And now I do it like this, and it's so much better. That makes it everything worthwhile.
So how much time do you put into a talk before you give it? Like if you're going to give a talk, is it just like you're on the, you know, obviously you're not on the plane, you said that already, but like, is it like you throw a bunch of slides together, or do you really like construct a story?
It's a story. It's the whole thing. And that's one of my most common ad board things. All right, you guys don't have a story here. Everyone needs a story. You have to explain what you're doing and then walk them through it. It's got to be a pleasant story that they can easily digest. And hopefully they get in your head a little bit. And you can show them how to see things. One of I think the best ways, rather than just watching the injections and seeing the before and afters, I have this thing where, you know, we've injected hundreds of people on the road. So we have all these injections, and people rightfully sometimes criticize that. They say, well, that's not the real world. You know, you're up there, you can inject as much tox and filler as you want, and that's not the average patient. They have a budget. Well, you're right. But we do that so we can show the audience everything. So that's why we do it.
All right, so I've been in so many advisory boards. And I can remember some distinctly. I'm thinking in particular of Munich once. We're in an advisory board for a company, and you're everyone's talking, and you're saying nothing, and you're in the back of the room saying nothing. And it's probably 2 hours into the talk, into the conversation, that everyone's putting in their 2 cents, some people more than others, and you sit back, and then you're quiet. And then after like 2 hours, like, everything you guys are talking about doesn't make sense to me. I think you're thinking about this wrongly. And you turned the whole thing turned upside down based on what you said. And everyone's like, He's right. Is that your MO? Is that something you always do? Do you sit back and hear everything and then say, wait a second, so I'm thinking about it? Like, you're not the first to throw your opinions out.
Right. I don't do that consciously. I don't always try to be the contrarian.
Right.
I sort of am in some ways. But if I was quiet, I was probably sitting there thinking about everything everyone's saying. And before I said 180 degrees, everything's backwards, I wanted to be sure.
Right.
And that's what I was doing.
So you're kind of formulating in your head.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
some of that.
You never say anything bad about anyone, which, I've seen some people now are like quick to put down others. You never do that. You say, this is how I think about it, and this is my view, but not like you're wrong or you're stupid or you're dumb, or which other people are quick to throw out there. Yeah.
And people have different motivations for doing these things.
Yeah.
I want to figure out the riddle. I want to figure out the mystery. Whatever it is, that's what I want to do. I have, everyone has an ego. No one has zero ego, but I don't want or need to be that person that's talking all the time. I have a rule for advisory boards. I say, I think the worth of an advisor is inversely related to the number of words they say, which is cruel.
That is great. I got to remember that. That is so true. The loudest ones are usually the ones who know the least. Yes.
But there's a reason for that. In any advisory board, whether it's 10 people, 12, 8, there's a cut line, right? Yeah. And people in that room realize that. And people right at that cut line have a little agita. It doesn't sit well with them. And they try to overcompensate. And they talk a lot. And often they talk a lot about nothing.
So how many people on an advisory board is ideal?
Depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for a new idea, like to change a paradigm, like something isn't working right, we need to figure this out, or we're having this sort of complication with our product, how can we minimize that? To change thinking, I think smaller is better, like 8 people.
8 people. Too many is a problem.
Yes. But when you're in an advisory board where, let's say people are talking a little about marketing or what would appeal to people, then a little more is better. Yeah. Because everyone has their own little biases. I'm a little anti-social media, but I do some, right? Some people love social media. Now, I've been beating up some people that do social media a lot, but there are a lot of people that do a lot of social media that are really great.
Listen, when I first came out in practice, I was marketing, and I got in trouble by I was on staff at the university, and they said, Steve, we don't like that you got that website. We think that website's a little too much. And I was pushing the boundaries by having a website. So I have some compassion for people today who are doing all these things. And in fact, I have a young partner who's been really pushing the envelope. And other plastic surgeons in town have been calling me up saying, Steve, you got to stop them. But I feel like I was that guy 20 years ago, so I get it. But I agree with you, there's a point where it's like, at the end of the day, we got to get good outcomes and do the right thing for patients. And some people, I think, flirt a little bit more with that than I think we did a generation ago.
Yeah, 100%.
So, what are you most proud about? You've been at a practice now 25, almost 30 years. What are you most proud about? Like, when you look back and say, you know what, I contributed this to aesthetic medicine. Not an easy question.
No, and I'll look at it a little more narrowly.
Okay.
When you're around for a long time, you get awards. People.
They just start to accumulate after a while.
I'm always very thankful.
Yeah.
Each one is nice. But I used to say I had a box full of them. Now I got a couple boxfuls of them, right? So people give these awards out, which dilutes what they actually mean. But I'll always remember my first one, and it was from the Plastic Surgery Society for all the plastic surgeons, the one that didn't blackball me, right? And they gave me an award for changing the practice of plastic surgery. Well, that's pretty cool.
Changing
the practice of plastic surgery.
That's pretty big.
Was in the words of that. That was a good one. I'll remember that one.
I like it.
But
all right, so
the best things in all this, thinking of new stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't work for free, but I think you and I are not dominated by commercial concerns. That's not our driver.
Money has
we
never been my driver.
Our thing. Right.
And I know it's never been your driver. And most of us who want to change the way people think, it's never our driver, because we get our excitement and our energy and our drive and our fulfillment from someone saying, "Oh, I never thought of it like that before." I know if I'm going to a meeting and I wrote a new theory, I came up with something, I'm like, "Oh, this is really creative. I love this idea. I can't wait to present it." I'm hoping you're in the room. I'm hoping someone like you is in the room. There's a few of you, and not more than a dozen, to be honest with you, in the world that I want in the room, because I want them to hear what I'm coming up with, because I want to go back and forth with you and tell me, like,
I want people to argue with me. I want people to say, "No, you're wrong because of this."
Yeah.
That I respect.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Anyone can just gainsay anything you say.
All right, so you also have another reputation, which I think we have to touch upon, and I have to touch upon it because I'm on my third beer with you right now, and I haven't even thought about it. I've been to many events where you have come in and people are like, "Where's Michael? I want to party with Michael today." And this happens whether it's Tokyo, Taipei, Johannesburg. It's like, where Michael is, I want to party with him tonight. How'd you get that reputation?
There are sort of two me's. The one in New York doesn't go out, goes to bed early, goes to the gym, eats fish and vegetables, right? For most dinners.
Oh my gosh.
A slice of pizza for dessert. Okay. And on the road, it's a different life for me. From the second I get on that airplane, that's my relaxation. Then, you've got your presentations, you've got some maybe live injections, something to do. The second that stuff is over, it's on.
Yeah.
I will go anywhere, I will stay up. It's so rare. People like you, people don't understand the responsibility that surgeons, especially plastic surgeons, bear in their head. I got both my boards, general surgery and plastic surgery. General surgery, people do it because they need it. So you have to do it, or it's an emergency. Plastic surgery is weird. You're taking someone completely healthy and often very attractive to try to make them even more attractive. It's almost like a heavier burden. I mean, I've operated on people shot 12 times, and it's life or death. But there's no decision making. You go in, and then there's decision making, but you just do it. But when someone trusts you to, basically peel their face apart and see if you can put it back together better, it's different.
All right, so when you get on the road, you're relaxed, and you'll have a couple beers, or maybe something else,
or maybe a bourbon. We're in America after all, the heartland of America, a very American whiskey,
and you'll have no problem drinking more than a few, or are you in moderation?
Zero when I'm done. I remember in my head. I remember the days when I was 20 and like they were yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, would it be reasonable for an older man like myself to run around like that? No, it'd be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of pressure. We work hard.
Yeah.
We work hard at home. We work hard on the road. We do everything to make. I'm sure you're the same way. when I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about my next 3 presentations and how I can make them better. Like what could be better next time? And that's pressure. And when you give that last presentation and you're in a good town, and for a very rare moment in your life, you have 0 responsibility. You're not home, you're not even in the same country. Someone's covering all your patients. I think it's okay to go a little nuts.
Have you ever gone all night long partying and gone right into a lecture and gave it the next morning?
Absolutely. Australia. So we talked about Australia. I did over Thanksgiving. So I'm in Australia for 30 hours or so. And I go down there because it's a company gig. And, you know, they wanted to do a Botox consensus ad board like they had done in America, and I did that here. Stuff. Now they want to do one in Australia. So they want to send me down there to do it. Okay. And, you know, I get there in the morning, I go right in, and I'm chairing the whole thing all day long. And I'm friends, this sounds a little weird, I'm friends with a group of ex-models. One of my good friends.
It doesn't sound weird.
It was from the old time when we were all younger, right? And we still stayed in touch. A couple are Australian. So we're at the little cocktail party at like 9 p.m. Everyone's going to go to bed. And these 2 glamazons come in to steal me away. So we go out, we're in Melbourne, and we go to 3 or 4 nightclubs. And then we go to the after hours place. And I'm doing, the next morning was only like a 3-hour ad board, as it often is. All day, then a 3-hour in the morning. So they're all in there in the group breakfast, and it's right in the front of the hotel. It's all glass. Girls drive up. I get out. We've been dancing all nighter, and I just walk right through them at 7:30, get a cup of coffee, run upstairs, change, brush my teeth. Brought my bag back down so I could go straight to the airport. I never touched the bed in my hotel room. All I did was put my suitcase in there. And
how'd the talk go?
Oh, it's perfect. Smooth.
All right, so you got a history. The Glamazon's not the only time in Australia as a little bit of a ladies' man. And I know that I've seen you with a few different ladies at some of these events somewhere in the world. Tell us about your reputation there.
I think you'd have to ask them to get a true accounting.
But never married.
I'm a single man, never
had
married.
Kids.
Right.
Why?
I'm kind of a drifter when it comes to that. It's bizarre. I've been thinking the last few days about a lecture I'm going to give in Croatia in October. Do I ever think about planning my life when I want to have kids? I don't. I just sort of go. Like everything else consumes my time. I do. I wish I had kids.
Really?
I do. I love kids.
Okay, now I'm going to stop you right there because it's not too late. And the reason why I say that is because if you've noticed, I'm wearing this tonight. And this is the bracelet because I just had a baby, me and Sabrina. And I just came from the hospital to meet you here because the baby was just born 2 days ago. So I got to get this off. But so I'm 56. I just had my 4th kid. So it's never too late. I mean, look, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro both, octogenarians.
Anthony Quinn, 81.
There you go.
This last one.
So you're pretty young in some scales.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just had my 4th baby. You never had a kid. It's never too late. But is there a special lady in your world?
Right now, no.
Why not?
Well, last couple girlfriends I had in New York didn't like it because I was always on the road, and when I was in New York, I was a total bore because I never wanted to go out, never wanted to go anywhere, never wanted to have a drink, never wanted to do anything, which is completely true. I was almost kind of seeing a girl actually back in Australia. I know I have some history there.
Yeah, you pick Australians,
don't you?
some history
there. Not that I have a fear of commitment, but that 2-flight minimum is maybe in the back of my head.
By the way, I dated a girl from Australia for a while, so I get it.
Yeah. And that didn't work out either.
Yeah.
So I would always, I love kids. It's the wife thing that I guess is the problem.
Is it hard to be Michael Kane's girlfriend?
I think it is.
Why?
I think if she's in our thing, which they usually are because that's where we live our lives, you know, there's a little reputation or there's a little thing that people would think about that girl.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. And outside of it, she would not understand probably the time I spend. Like, I'm sitting here and sometimes I'll be staring into space. They think I'm doing nothing. I'm not thinking about a lecture. I'm thinking about a facelift I did last week.
Yeah.
When I do facelifts, this sounds a little weird. It's not weird. It's not creepy. I have my 5x7 black and whites, right? I like black and whites. I like the contrast. And I stick them on tape. Everyone does in the OR wall. I stick them on my bedroom wall next to my bed. And I rotate it like a week ahead. I stare at that face constantly.
So you know it real well.
Jowls? How heavy is that neck? Am I going to go deep in that neck? Am I going to, am I going to shave a little anterior belly, the digastric? If it doesn't look that heavy and I don't shave that, what am I going to do to that neck? I mean, this obsesses me.
But does this take you away from a personal relationship? Like, can you not have a girlfriend, wife, serious partner because you're too busy worrying about shaving digastrics?
I don't think so, but I think they may think so.
You know, it's a lot of sacrifice. You know, being with someone means sacrifice. It's compromise. You can't be a successful relationship unless you're willing to compromise on multiple levels, which is hard, no doubt.
I agree. Yeah.
Your background's Albanian. I remember this well. Were your parents immigrants?
My mother was just barely born here, only because she was late. So she just hit American soil.
And your father?
And my father was born here, but the grandparents, no.
So did you grow up with that ethnic background?
Well, a little. My dad was Irish and a little Welsh. So my sisters and I sort of identify as Albanian. That was the dominant culture in our home. But my mother, Albanian, was her first language, obviously. She was not supposed to teach us Albanian. That was, my dad didn't want it.
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
He wanted his kids to be American kids.
I had the same thing.
You know, he did.
Okay, so how much does that immigrant mentality dominate your personality today?
Well, last weekend I was at the Albanian convention. It sounds ridiculous, but it's this thing my mother used to drag me to when I was a little kid, and I've been going ever since. I was in Detroit, downtown Detroit last weekend with the Albanians. And
do you identify with them?
Oh yeah, and you have friendships for like most of your life.
Yeah. Have you been there?
People go there. I have. Just once.
When you're in Albania, or when you were there, do you feel a sense of belonging?
No.
No. Yeah. Interesting.
It's different.
Yeah.
It's a rough place.
It's a rough place. Although it's coming up.
It is.
So your mom and dad must have that immigrant mentality, because I see it in you to some extent.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would think so. Yeah. And we're lucky. I think. Well, number one, we're lucky we're born in this country, right? And we're lucky because our parents were our parents. A lot of parents that aren't so great, right? And well, I've always considered myself very lucky in everything. Have I worked hard? Yeah. Have I had good ideas? Yeah. But I've been lucky too.
Did you come from money?
No, never. I mean, my dad was a cop, so we certainly weren't poor, but we lived in a neighborhood we probably couldn't afford, so that my sisters and I could go to a decent high school in the Philadelphia public school system.
So they worked really hard for you guys.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad was the hardest working person I've ever known.
Did you pay for your college?
I paid for everything.
For everything?
Everything.
How much does that influence who you are today?
Everything.
The fact that you had to pay for it?
I don't take anything for granted. I didn't, you know. And I remember the conversation I had with my dad about it. It was great. Now, in today's world, it may sound a little old-fashioned, but it was right then. I have 2 older sisters. And he said, Michael, you know, I don't make a lot of money, and I help your sisters with college because they're girls. You know, I don't have any more money, and you're a man, so you're on your. You got to do what you got to do. This is it.
Do you think that was a blessing?
Yes.
Why?
Oh, it made me want to work hard. And, you know, I like things when I earn things.
Yes.
You know, it's good.
The greatest gift, in my opinion, is to work hard for something.
Yes.
Because you never appreciate till you work hard for it. I think the hardest thing I've had as a parent to this day is not to give my kids everything. Grit is what is success. I believe that money, people always say, does money and love buy happiness? And the answer to that I have to that question is no, unless you earn it. If you work hard for something, damn, it feels good. But you had to work for it. If someone gives you the money, you win the lottery, your parents give it to you, it doesn't buy happiness. But when I'm sitting in first class right now, I'm like, I was poor. I lived on welfare. I feel good about sitting in first class, but I earned it. It makes all the difference in the world. You agree?
I agree.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
All right, another personal question for you. If you weren't a doctor, what would you be?
Well, in the real world, or what I would want to be. So I would want to be a director. I would like to sit around, think of projects over years, let them stew, and then make a movie. In the real world, because there's not many of those jobs, I would have been a biomedical engineer / computer science engineer.
So that's what you would have, but the director one
I
sounds more sexy to me.
Well, you know, when I did the 5-year program, which was weird, my other option was MIT. MIT started recruiting me in 10th grade, but I was paying for everything myself, and I was mad at them that they didn't offer me a full ride. A bunch of colleges offered me everything, total full ride. MIT only offered me a half ride, and it was a really expensive place. And going there for 4 years, I wasn't sure I could swing it, which is why I did the other thing. I just, went to college for a year and was in medical school. And back then, there's no internet. My worldview, my dreams weren't anything really beyond the doctor.
Was Michael Kane a nerd in high school?
No, I did well in high school. Well, I hung out with the nerdy kids, but my best school friend was like the biggest jock in the school. So I straddled the worlds. So I was in all AP classes and STAR classes. We had these classifications. Tracking was a big thing then. But, in 11th, 12th grade, I never missed a keg party either. So
what would Michael Kane, what would you tell your 8th grade self today? Or 9th grade or 10th grade around there?
I would probably tell, this sounds bad, I'd probably tell my 8th and 9th grade self not to smoke so much pot. I got a little sidetracked there for a couple years. Didn't really help any, whatever. It was the 70s. Every kid had a bong in their bedroom. It was a different time. And I would just tell him not to worry so much.
Yeah.
I constantly, I'm not sure if worry is the right word, but I get obsessed with the thing that's right in front of me that I can deal with.
Yeah.
I'm not the long-range planner.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
thinking about my life 2 years from now. I'm thinking about, you know, an unusual lecture in Croatia, what I'm going to say at ASPS, the standard thing, and the faces that I've got on the schedule.
Yeah.
You know, that's, I'm always in the near future. Like my favorite author is, you know, people call him sci-fi, he's not. He's a sort of near futurist.
Who?
William Gibson. He's a guy, Neuromancer was his first novel. He sort of coined the term cyberspace. He wrote about things in novels that didn't exist for 25 years and then they all exist. Interesting guy.
Prophet. So what does a retired Michael Kane look like? Retired, or will you ever retire?
Don't know. I think depends, like a lot of plastic surgeons, depends on our health, right?
Yeah, is that true?
Most of the generation ahead of me that I liked and covered for years, they kept working until something happened. Right? So I always thought I would not do that. I always thought I would just stop and do something completely different.
So,
but
you don't have like this future where you're sitting on a beach and you're like playing paddleboard all day long or pickleball all day long.
I would lose my mind.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand that. I could stand sitting at the beach at night, not a sun person.
Yeah, yeah.
For a surfer, which is sort of weird, but ex-surfer. But no, now when I'm always busy, I crave a day like that.
Yeah,
which is hard to get, a whole day. Well, you have a newborn, you're not getting a whole day for years, right? Not going to happen. But cutting everything off and just having all my days like that, no. Can't imagine it.
Are you religious?
No, I used to be.
Agnostic or atheist or?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I'm drifting. So, I mean, I was an altar boy for 10 years. And,
wow.
But that was just expected of me.
Yeah. All right, can we get to the rapid fire session?
Sure.
Okay, rapid fires, you got to give me just like one word answers, okay?
Yeah, all right.
So, as much as I want to pontificate on all these, because I could probably do it.
Yeah.
All right, ready? Who's your hero growing up?
My dad. Easy.
Salt or sugar?
Salt.
Ketchup or mustard?
Mustard.
Favorite baseball team?
Phillies.
Favorite football team?
Eagles.
Okay, baseball or football?
Football.
Beer or liquor?
Beer.
Favorite cereal?
Cheerios.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Favorite candy bar?
Baby Ruth.
Baby Ruth?
I haven't had a candy bar in like 20 years, but if I were to have one,
it would be Baby Ruth.
Yeah.
What'd you want to be when you got older, when you were younger? I think I already asked you that.
Pro football player.
Huh?
Pro football player.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't in the cards.
Okay. Favorite color?
Royal blue. I know that's 2 words, but.
Okay, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Mind reading.
Which person, other than your family, inspires you the most professionally? You look up to this person.
Professionally. I'd say Tom Reese.
Awesome. All right, what do you think of the pizza?
Tremendous, but different.
Ooh,
See, the
tremendous
thing is,
but different.
I like this, but I realize I'm not going to have it again unless I come here or go to Rome, right?
So that's a good thing. So
that's a good thing.
Sometimes you want to taste something you've never get a chance to taste again in the future, and that in itself is an enjoyment.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, Steve. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
Great.
It was awesome. Appreciate
Total pleasure.
We'll do it again.
An honor. Yeah.